Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel once before. So I only introduced this brewery to you here on the channel for the first time very recently, but this is a brewery that carries a very good reputation these days and they're just kind of starting to get out there a little bit more, which is nice to see. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one that I have heard very, very good things about. It's also a style that I very much enjoy actually, so I'm really curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then we are going to head through to Glasgow once again. We're going to have a look at a beer from another one of the now numerous gypsy breweries operating in the city. So this one comes to you from Up Front Brewing, and this is called Giulia. So it comes in at 11% ABV, and this one is an English style barley wine brewed in 2019 and aged in Côte d'Arôme red wine barrels for 2 years, then blended with a 3-month-old English style barley wine and aged for a further 3 months on ripe Genoa figs and sticky Deglet Nour dates. So yeah, basically a barley wine aged in red wine barrels and then blended and aged with figs and dates. So yeah, this should be pretty damn interesting. But this beer has been very highly rated on Untappd, and people have told me that this is pretty damn awesome actually. So very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. This should be a little bit of a special review. So let's crack on then and see how we go. Definitely nice to feature Up Front Brewing on the channel once again after we had the Das Ist Techno 6. That was an awesome beer and one that I highly recommend that you check out. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Up Front Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to whenever I'm at home in the motherland of Scotland, of course. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Up Front Brewing once again. So Up Front Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are a gypsy brewery based through in Glasgow, and the company was founded by Jake Griffin, who has a background in neuroscience and biomedicine, and he actually holds a PhD in neuroscience. But he started brewing in his kitchen during his days at university, and then he took his first job at Fine Ales, which is over kind of at the top of the Mulligan actually. Very good brewery as well, I have to say. But then he also went on to work as the head brewer for Drygate Brewery in Glasgow, which is a joint venture between Williams Brothers Brewing and Tennent's. But he worked there from 2014 until 2017. But in 2015, he formed Up Front Brewing officially as a side project, and he began brewing some beers using Drygate's brew kit that they had. But apparently he had some Banksy artwork that he bought as a student, and then he used it as collateral with Scott Williams to get the Up Front Brewing project off the ground. But apparently he also managed to get some artwork for his beers done by Stanley Donwood, who has done some of the artwork for the Radiohead albums. So that's pretty cool, quite an artsy focused brewery this one actually. But these days Jake continues to operate Up Front as a gypsy brewery. Most of the beers are brewed at 71 Brewing up in Dundee, but they've also brewed a number of beers at Overtone Brewing in Glasgow as well. Those guys are over in Yoker, of course. But yeah, they do lots of different beers. They've got quite a few sour beers. They have a few imperial stouts as well, and then they've got random things like this. But as of March 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 25 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I say, they do a whole variety of different styles. I need to try a few of their sour beers actually. There's a few of the sour beers have been very highly rated, but the most well-known beer from these guys is of course the Das ist Techno 6, which was originally brewed with Brewdog. But yeah, that is probably the most well-known one from these guys. But I want to try some of the special fruit ones that they do as well, because those are supposed to be very good, and they've also got a very good Imperial Milk Stout from what I understand as well. But yeah, as I say, that is all I can tell you about Up Front Brewing for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, again, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on and have a look at this beer itself then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open up. As you can see, lovely once again from Up Front Brewing. You can see here is the Up Front Brewing kind of symbol on the side. But yeah, there it tells you a little bit about the beer itself. So as we said earlier, this one, it's an English style barley wine brewed back in 2019 and aged in Côte d'Or red wine barrels for 2 years, then blended with a 3-month-old English style barley wine and aged for a further 3 months on ripe Genoa figs and sticky Deglet Nauer dates. So they come from Algeria, if I remember correctly, but the rate of fruiting in this one is 70 grams per litre, so that is pretty crazy. But there's another one of the Up Front Brewing symbols there, the little triangle sort of thing, as you can see. But yeah, this should be pretty cool. So yeah, as you know, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I'm a huge fan of barley wines. I absolutely love them. Both American and some of the English ones can be very good as well. But yeah, the main difference for me between an English barley wine and the American ones tend to be a little bit more kind of oily and you know, just a bit more oily and sweet, if that makes sense. Whereas, you know, so the caramel is a little bit more oily and straight up, and the fruity character is a little bit more kind of rounded. Whereas the English barley wines, they've got a little bit of toastiness to the brown sugar sometimes. They've got a wee bit more breadiness also, and the fruits are a little bit more kind of dry in their character, actually. So yeah, there's a few differences between the English and American barley wines, but they can both be very, very nice beers, actually. So yeah, with the fruiting in this one and the red wine barrel aging, I think this could turn out to be very nice. We did, of course, have a very good barley wine from another Glasgow gypsy brewery. That was the Milo the Crusher from that was the Milo the Crusher from Dead End Brew Machine. So I'm curious to see whether this one can rival that, actually. So we'll crack it open and see how we go. But yeah, an 11% barley wine, this one. I think this beer cost me somewhere in the region of like £8 sterling. So what's that going to be? That's going to be about, what, 110 kroner, something like that. So 110 kroner, about 11 would it be about, yeah, maybe about €10, €10.50, something like that. So that's going to be in the region of like $12 American. But this one, you know, I couldn't resist this. I love a good barley wine, and this one was just supposed to be very, very nice. But I bought this beer, I believe, at the wee beer shop in the south side of Glasgow, which is another beer shop that is definitely worth checking out. Plain silver top on the can there. But yeah, let's crack this guy open and get on with the tasting. So this is the Giulia English barley wine from Up Front Brewing, one of the numerous gypsy breweries in Glasgow. Let's get it out. Oh, it's gone a little bit wild with its bubbles, but yeah, that'll do for the moment. Let's get this poured. I could feel it was a little bit hard there, and that we might have to pause the video and just let this settle down a wee bit. I didn't really lose very much of it, but yeah, I think I maybe let the oxygen in just a little bit too fast there. But yeah, we'll just pour it slowly and see how we go. If we need to pause it and let the beer settle a wee bit, then we will do that and then just edit the video together. But yeah, as you can see, it did get a little bit excited when we let it out there. But aye, just as well I put a wee mat down there under there for eventualities like this. But yeah, I think maybe at the moment this is probably enough to do the aroma and the appearance and stuff like this. So yeah, there we go. That's lined up nicely, so my OCD is happy. So yeah, anyway, as you can see, this beer does look pretty damn nice. Yeah, you can see the head has poured to be just under it's about a finger and a half of a frothy, I would say very light kind of beige head, but you can see there on the camera it is quite bumpy. There's a whole host of different sizes of bubbles in there, but it looks very, very nice. You can see a mix of very small bubbles underneath and kind of larger big ones on the top. One of my hairs has gotten into the glass too. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, anyway, there we go. So in terms of colour of this beer then, to the naked eye without shining light through it, I would say that this is a very dark sort of chestnutty stained mahogany kind of thing. My doors over there in the cupboard are stained mahogany. It's not a million, it's pretty much the same colour as those doors actually, but if we shine the light through it, it's actually got a little bit more of a kind of bright chestnutty colour to it. So yeah, it looks very nice. So remember, the different things that can affect the colour of your beer are: 1, the type of malts that you use. That goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. When it comes to barley wines like this, you know, I would suspect this has maybe got a long boil, but you can usually tell. One of the things that tells you about the length of the wort boil in these beers is the kind of is the way that the brown sugars come out. If they're very oily and sweet, usually it's a bit of a shorter boil, but if you get these kind of big, smooth, leathery, slightly dry flavours, that tells you that it's a longer kind of boil. But quite often you can get barley wines boiled for, like, you know, they'll boil the wort for like 6 hours or something crazy like this. But yeah, the colour of this one does look very nice, but you can also have it affected by different adjuncts that you add into the beer. So maybe the fruits will be affecting the colour of this one, and also the barrel aging can play a role as well, particularly when you've got a more kind of brown sugary orientated beer like this. But remember, the barley wine is essentially the big brother of the double IPA. Remember, pale ales, IPAs, double IPAs, barley wines, they're all related via their hop to malt ratio. So yeah, this one I think is going to be a little bit of a beast just looking at it. But if we shine the light through it, you can see it has got a wee bit of haze to it, so it's unfiltered. Does it have any it's just malted barley and wheat that's in this one. So yeah, remember, you can get things as well called oat wines and wheat wines, and they are the same idea, but they've got a bigger chunk of oat and wheat in the malt base. I've had oat wines and wheat wines from Japan actually. For some reason they quite like them over there, but the wheat wines are a little bit more common in California as well actually. I think that's where the Japanese got them from. But yeah, this one, I think it's got a little bit of haze to it, which is probably due to the wheat content in it. But in terms of what you'd expect from a barley wine, from in terms of colour and so on, I think this one is pretty much in line with that. So yeah, nothing else we really need to say about the appearance of this beer. There's not really much visible carbonation, just 1 or 2 big bubbles there and a few little ones straying up toward the bottom of the head there, but overall it does look pretty nice. So let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we go with this one then. I'm very, very curious about this. Oh, that's just crazy that. I'm going to just put the rest of it in because it smells as if it's a little bit further away, so I want to just make sure I get as much of the aroma toward my nose as I can. I think my dad's going to enjoy this one. When I'm back in Scotland, I always give a good chunk of the beer to my dad to try. He loves trying them. But yeah, the aroma out of this is just crazy. It's absolutely lovely. So straight away with this one, you can smell it's got everything you'd want from a barley wine. You've got a lovely little bit of brown sugar in there. You've got a wee bit of woodiness. You've also got, pardon me, you've also got those kind of lovely fruity characters. You've also got just a wee bit of hoppiness as well. It's got that lovely big brown sugary element to it, but it's also got that big kind of boozy, fruity, almost slightly cakey character to it. The aroma on this, just on first impression, it's absolutely lovely. So let's break that aroma down for you and just describe it a wee bit more kind of in depth, if you like. So we'll sugar this up a little bit. Yeah, that's lovely. I think this could well rival Milo the Crusher from Dead End Brew Machine. I know the two brewers actually. The Chris at Dead End Brew Machine is friends with Jake here at Up Front Brewing, so kind of interesting. But yeah, this is lovely. So backbone of this beer you can smell a lovely kind of smooth oaky note to it. On top of that, for me, there's a lot of kind of sticky brown sugar in there. It has a little bit of this kind of caramel wafer type vibe to it. So yeah, you've got that smooth woody note in there. Little hints of vanilla I would add as well. So smooth oaky note, little bit of vanilla, then that kind of caramel wafery sort of thing. Definitely a good little bit of biscuit as well, that McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. And yeah, the brown sugars in this are absolutely lovely. So yeah, lovely little bit of a kind of sweet brown bready character, absolutely. So lovely sweet kind of brown bready notes. Straight up sweet caramel as well. But yeah, it definitely shows you, you can tell it's an English barley wine because of the kind of dryness that the brown sugars have. For me, that's one of the main characteristics. Having that little bit of brown bread and that kind of dry brown sugary character, that is the main characteristic that you'll find from, that is one of the main characteristics of an English barley wine for me. So yeah, this one, the malty side of this beer is really nice. Smooth, oaky, woody character, a little bit of vanilla for me, kind of caramel wafery brown sugar, a thicker, more oily, sweet caramel there, but it still maintains a little bit of dryness. And then you've also got just a bit of that McVitie's digestive biscuity vibe to the beer as well. So yeah, the way that this beer goes about its business, I think, is very, very nice. It gets a big thumbs up from me from the malty side of things. You do get one or two little nutty characters out of it as well, but other than that, I think that describes the malty, yeasty side of things very, very well. Yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, there's not too much to report there, I don't think. You can smell there's a teeny little bit, there is a teeny little bit of an earthy character coming out of it, so you do get a little bit of that, but I will point out that the green component in this beer is very, very smooth. On the aroma, so yeah, there's a little bit of smooth earthiness in there. You do get a wee touch of herbal character, but again, that's very minimal. And there's a teeny little bit of floral note. But for me, the main thing coming out of the green side of the hops in this beer is a smooth grassiness. So getting a lot of that out of this beer. So yeah, green component for me in this one isn't too pungent, but yeah, I think it goes together very, very well, and it's sort of in keeping with the vibe of the rest of the beer. Like, it really keeps in, the smooth green component really matches well with the kind of woody backbone that this one has. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer though is really, really interesting. So yeah, you can smell the fruity adjuncts in this one, the figs and the dates, but you can also smell a little bit of the fruit coming from the hops in this one. I would wonder if the hop used in this beer is Bramling's Cross, because underneath the adjunct fruits I do get a little bit of a kind of black curranty character, and I've always found that Bramling's Cross just gives you a wee bit of that black curranty note when you put it in a big kind of brown sugary malt base like this. But yeah, this is just a crazy, crazy smelling beer, this one. So you get that lovely, you do get a little bit of that kind of brown bready, like fruit roll kind of thing. A fruit loaf, I should say, under the fruits there, but definitely some nice kind of black curranty notes, and you can smell a mix of the dried dates in this one. I do get a little bit of sultana out of this as well, dried white green grapes for those of you watching in America. Americans always complain when I use sultana as a descriptor, but yeah, you do get a little bit of sultana out of this one. You do get the black curranty base, like I said, but you can definitely pick up the dates and then the figs too. But I get a little bit of a sharper, almost raisiny note out of this one as well, actually. So there's a lot of stuff going on with the fruity side of this beer, but needless to say, it's absolutely lovely in the way that it goes about. It's absolutely lovely in the way that it goes about its fruity side of things. So yeah, I love it. I really like how this beer goes about its. I really love how this beer goes about its business. So yeah, aroma wise, this is awesome. It really is awesome, and it's reminding me, as I say, of Milo the Crusher, which is probably the best Scottish brewed barley wine that I've reviewed for on the channel. One of the best barley wines I've reviewed on the channel, period. So I've got a feeling that this one might be very close to matching it. So let's have a look at it and see. So as I always say, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma. of the beer and see what you think, because that's always half the experience when it comes to craft beer, whiskies and sakes and stuff like that. But we are now going to taste this one. So yeah, this is the Giulia, an 11% English style barley wine, aged in red wine barrels, then blended with a new barley wine, which is aged further on dates and figs. So yeah, this should be pretty interesting. But this one comes to you from Up Front Brewing over in Glasgow, 11% ABV. So it's a monster. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh. That is very nice. Yeah. Now I'm going to say, I was comparing this to Milo the Crusher. This is completely different from that. Milo the Crusher was a big, very sweet barley wine. This one's actually it's kind of very dark and very cakey. So yeah, probably this really shows the English side of the barley wine style very, very well, whereas the Milo the Crusher was definitely more of an American style barley wine, showing you the big sweet side of things. Yeah, but I will say, this is an absolute monster of a beer. I'm glad I'm sharing this one with my dad. I would be absolutely floored if I was to drink all of this myself. But yeah, I'm going to say straight away, that is pretty special. So take a few sips of it, sugar it around your palate, and just let your mouth adjust to it before you start thinking about it too much. Oh yeah, that's nice. The other thing you'll notice about this is that you take a few sips of it, it really does sweeten up a little bit. When you take this one in, it's very boozy and it's very dark and everything like this. But I think I do think it goes together really quite well in that sense. Yeah, this one, this you do need to take a few sips of this and just let your whole mouth adjust to it before you start thinking about it too much. It's a lovely, lovely beer, this, but it does take a wee bit of time to open up, that's for sure. Yeah, but I'm just going to say straight away, well done to Up Front Brewing. These guys, you know, on the basis of the Das ist Techno-6 and this one, and I still need to try this. I think it's the Scottish raspberries and the Scottish blueberries it's called, and also the bourbon milk stout. I really want to try those beers. But these guys are getting a lot of good write-ups, and when you try one of their beers, you can immediately see why that is. So this is definitely one of the Scottish breweries that you need to have a go at and see what you think. These guys are doing some really, really ridiculously good stuff. Yeah. So let's take another sip of this and we'll actually get started on describing the flavour to you. Just crazy, just absolute craziness. Yeah, so middle third of your palate then. This beer, the backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely smooth oaky character in there. You do get that forms the backbone of the beer. Toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you will get a wee touch of vanilla out of it, but the woodiness, I would say, is less prominent in the flavour than it was in the aroma. You could really smell it forming the backbone of the beer in this one. And honestly, red wine barrel aging isn't something I've always been a massive fan of. It can work, but it's something that I've never really been overly bothered. But I'm more interested in, you know, like cognac barrel aging. Bourbon barrel aging's all right, but yeah, rum barrel aging and cognac barrel aging for me are where it goes. And of course, I love a good Scotch whisky barrel aged imperial stout, but I'm biased in that sense. But yeah, red wine barrel aging is something that I could kind of take or leave, to be honest with you. So yeah, but you can detect, within that wood, you can detect a wee touch of the kind of vinous type vibe coming out of this one. I should have pointed out as well, the Côte du Rhône is a wine producing region. It's based on the Rhône River, which is in the kind of southeast of France. The Rhône River comes from Switzerland and goes out toward the south coast of France. But yeah, the the woodiness in this one is really interesting. The red wine really adds a bit of depth to the fruity characters, because yeah, you get that smooth, slightly dry, oaky, woody character there with a wee bit of vanilla, and you can get the kind of red fruity notes just you get the red fruity notes just kind of sitting on top of it. But yeah, I really like how this one goes together. Yeah, this beer has the backbone of this one, the smooth woody character is just really, really nice. Sitting on top of that kind of slight layer of the red kind of wine vinessy type vibes, but on top of that you get a mix of like a kind of dense brown bready, almost like fruit loaf type thing. You can feel that sitting on top. It's almost slightly cakey, but that's what sits on top of the kind of red wine woody type vibes that you get out of this beer. But on top of the bready notes, there's a lovely kind of on top of that there, pardon me, there's a lovely sort of on top of the brown bready notes there, you can feel the brown sugars in this. And I'm trying to figure out whether the brown sugars are quite leathery, as I was talking about earlier when you get a long boil barley wine. So yeah, with this one sitting on top of the bread, you definitely get a little bit of you can feel there's a sort of layer there, and it goes down the middle line of your tongue. You can feel that sort of leathery, brown sugary character there, and that forms the backbone of the brown sugars. But when you go into the dead centre of your palate, you can feel there is a little bit more of an oily, concentrated circle there, and that gives you a wee touch of a kind of darker treacle molasses sort of thing, and that sort of flavour is a bit more common. That is a little bit more common in these kind of barley wine type beers. So yeah, you can get that. You've got that leathery brown sugary base in there going right down the middle of the tongue, and as you go out toward the edge of the palates, it kind of fades out a little bit and you start to get a wee bit of the McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. But yeah, I think this beer has had a slightly longer water boil, at least 6 hours, but maybe potentially more than that. But yeah, in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel the booziness coming out of this beer. There's just a little circle there in the dead centre of that middle third of your palate where you get a bit of a more treacly molasses type vibe coming out of this one. But yeah, the malty backbone of this one does, the further you go into the aftertaste with it, the more woody and sort of cakey and things it gets. And I quite like how it goes about its business in that regard with this beer. So thumbs up to them for that. Other than that, I don't think there's too much to say about the malty side of this beer. So let's look at the back third of your palate then, and the more kind of yeasty side of things. So the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that bready build up there. It feels a little bit cakey or brown bready in a sense. Then the base of the back third of your palate is a little bit more, you get a little bit of that more kind of bread crusty sort of thing. You get a bit more of the kind of grainy bread crusty notes toward the back of the palate. You get the brown bready, you get a bit of a more kind of brown bready note there on the top, and the woody notes underneath get a bit drier as well. As I always say, more bitter, drier flavours come out toward the back of the palate, whereas the sweeter flavours come out further forward. So yeah, drier wood, the bread crusty, brown bready notes, and then that thicker, sweeter brown bready note on top of that. But then you get the kind of yeasty vibe coming out of the beer as well. And yeah, the way that goes together is the way the yeasty note comes out of this is quite nice. You get a really sweet brown bread out of this. It's even sweeter than the kind of wholemeal brown bready thing that's there too. So you just feel that slightly more dense, doughy, bready kind of thing on top, and then you've got a sweeter bread crust kind of surrounding it. So yeah, dry wood, grainy bread crust, a more grainy wholemeal bread, then a sweeter doughy ball thing which composes the yeasty character. It's almost a little bit cakey as well, I have to say, the further you go into the aftertaste. But definitely on the back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is markedly taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of the palate, it just squashes down a wee bit, and those flavours condense together. But yeah, I really like how all of that pieces together in this one. So yeah, it gets a big thumbs up for the malty yeasty side of things. But yeah, on the hoppy. On the hoppy side of the beer then. Back corners of the palate, you do get a little bit of earthiness in there, and that's quite smooth, but as you move further forward, it's a little bit herbal, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a wee bit more, it is a wee bit more kind of floral and aromatic in a sense, but round the front curve of the palate, it's got a little bit of a lighter, grassy sort of vibe to it. But the overall, the green component in this beer is a little bit oily and a wee bit smooth. But remember, the barley wine, while it is actually it does actually have quite a lot of hop in it, it's not the most hop forward beer in a sense, I think we can say. But yeah, I think that describes this one quite nicely, for sure. So, fruity side of the beer then, and the front third of your palate. So, the border region between front third and middle third of your the border region between front third and middle third of your tongue on this one then. So the border region there, you do get a little bit of this kind of bready, brown bready build-up. It is like a kind of fruit loafy sort of thing. It's almost got a little bit of a kind of brandy vibe to it. But then the base of that front third of your palate again is quite bready and quite does have a bit of that woody undertone to it there. So yeah, you've got that fruit loafy kind of thing, then a little bit of a kind of sweet bready character on top and a bit of woodiness underneath. On top of that though, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll out of the hops in the beer. And for me, I'm pretty sure that this is Bramling's Cross. Some of the herbal character and the earthiness you get from the green component too do indicate to me Bramling's Cross, English hop, very popular in English barley wines. But yeah, on the back half of that front third of your palate there, you do get a little bit of a kind of sultana note out of this one. Then as you move further forward, it gives you a wee bit more of a kind of, so you've got that dry kind of white green grapey sultana type vibe, and then as you move further forward, it's got a little bit of a kind of black curranty sort of thing to it. So yeah, the way that goes together is quite nice. But then on top of that, this is when you get the figs and the dates in there, because remember, whenever you add fruit into beer as an adjunct, it sort of suppresses a little bit of the green component, and you can feel that happening a little bit the further into the aftertaste that you go. You can feel it doing that to the kind of grassy side of the green component in this beer. So how would we say, the on the fruity adjuncts, the dates, they sit toward the back of the front. They sit on top of the kind of hoppy, oily fruits there. They sit toward the back of that front third of your palate. But then as you come further forward, it sweetens up and you get that slightly sharper, more oily, figgy character coming out of the beer. So in the front, sitting on top of the oily, hoppy fruits, you've got the dates at the back and the figs at the front, but you can feel both of them. I think the dates actually, they kind of come around the sides of your palate toward the front corners of your palate, so they come out toward the side and mask some of the grassy character of this beer as well. But yeah, the thing is with the fruits, the further you go into the aftertaste, the more sort of boozy they seem. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting beer, this one, but it shows off the characteristics you'd expect of an English barley wine really well, namely the sort of cakey fruit loaf, dried fruit kind of thing. So yeah, the way that all goes together in this beer, I think, is very very interesting actually, and very nice. So yeah, this beer gets a big thumbs up from me, and it gets a big thumbs up from me in that particular regard. So yeah, I do like this. I do like how this one goes about its business for sure. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the flavour. Let's round off the review with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. Definitely a full-bodied beer, there's no doubt in my mind about that. So yeah, you've got a nice big kind of oily mouthfeel. So this one is a full-bodied, very big oily kind of thickness to it. The carbonation is very, very smooth, and it's got a degree of slickness. You'd kind of want that from a barley wine, to be honest with you anyway. Like I said, it's got a bit of dryness to it. It's got the big boozy brown sugary notes, but I think yeah, the further you go into the aftertaste with this one, it gets a bit drier. I think there is a degree of bitterness to this one. You can still feel a little bit of the hoppy note lingering there. I do wonder how this one would go if you sat and aged it for a little while, because you could do that. So yeah, you might find this one might mature quite nicely, but I was just very curious to try it actually, and considering it was barrel aged already, it has turned out to be in very good condition. Because yeah, when it's aged in a barrel for like 3 years or whatever, it's going to mature very, very nicely, I have to say. But yeah, this one, it's got a lovely big kind of dryness that comes out the further into the aftertaste you go. It's got a degree of sweetness as well, which you do want from a barley wine, and you've got big oily fruity characters, but it's also quite cakey and things. It really shows you the kind of more cakey bready side of the English style barley wine actually. So keep that in mind with this one. It's a really interesting beer, to say the least. So yeah, big oily fruity characters as well, good blend between hoppy fruit and adjunct fruit, but definitely worth trying if you get the chance. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. I can feel the booze going to my head a wee bit with it, so I think it is a good point to round off there. But yeah, a very, very interesting beer, and as I was saying earlier, I was comparing this to Milo the Crusher from Dead End Brew Machine, and that one really shows what you can do with an American style barley wine. This one really shows you very well the depth of flavour you can get out of an English barley wine. So this is absolutely worth trying. A wee bit expensive, but certainly a nice treat. Don't drink the full can yourself though, because that will absolutely floor you. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Up Front Brewing as well, and we will definitely return to these guys at some point soon. But in the meantime, check out my social media, check out their social media. This was the Giulia English Barley Wine from Up Front Brewing, one of the numerous gypsy breweries now operating in Glasgow. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you guys on the next one.